So a couple of days ago, a small but extremely painful zit just happened to pop up in my forehead. And I guess my children saw that as some sort of target. Like when we were roughhousing, they actually actively sought out the zit. It's almost like they knew that it would be way more painful to like smash my zit with their fists. Every time I feel like the swelling is coming down and it's starting to fade, here they come again, punching it until it makes a comeback. At this point, the zit is a part of the family. Like it's just been there for so long. I'm actually thinking of naming it very soon. I don't know what I'm talking about. I truly apologize. Sometimes I start off with an idea for an intro and they kind of just take on a life of their own. But anyways, let's get straight into today's video because there are a few things that I wanted to talk about, kind of just cover certain things that are happening within the community. Some of this stuff is like pretty groundbreaking, others not so much, but I still wanted to talk about it. Now, the first thing that I wanted to talk about or address has to be the new Marvel blockies collectibles that just came out. Now, I should clarify because I know people are going to try to call me out or trying to catch me slacking here. I completely get that they're not the same scale, okay? The Marvel Legends line is usually about 6 inches. The blockies are a little bit smaller than that. And then granted, they're not technically action figures, but they're still articulated collectibles. And I think that they kind of fall into the same umbrella, the same category. Now, it's interesting because when blockies first got announced, or at least the Marvel blockies, I do remember there being a ton of different collectors stating that for some unknown reason, I'm assuming that they maybe had or they pretended to have inside information, but they actually said that blockies were not going to be sold here in the States because of like licensing issues, because maybe Hasbro had like an exclusive Marvel license to only manufacture collectibles here in the States. But I'm assuming that either these manufacturers found some sort of loophole, or maybe it wasn't an exclusive deal, or maybe because they're not technically like legitimate 6-inch action figures, that maybe that's why they were able to mass produce them and send them to the States. But again, I operated under the idea that these were not going to be sold in person at a normal retail setting. Like I had seen, for example, like FYE and other smaller retailers like comic shops and a lot of toy stores here locally that had them, but they actually import collectibles, or they are able to get like third-party sellers to ship stuff out to them. Sometimes they'll get like Japan collectibles that should not be available here in the States. You usually have to pay quite a bit of a markup, but from that perspective, I completely get it. Like, you know, they find ways to be able to ship stuff from overseas that probably shouldn't be sold here at a retail setting, but because they're smaller retailers, they can do that. But I honestly did not assume, or I did not expect Walmart to have these in stock. I think that's pretty groundbreaking, and that's something that definitely needs to be talked about. Now, again, they don't directly compete with each other, and also I don't see like a ton, maybe like thousands of different collectors leaving the Marvel Legends line to pick up blockies. That's just not going to happen. That's not realistic. But do I believe that maybe a few hundred stop collecting? Maybe they're just so fed up with Marvel Legends in general, or just Marvel collectibles in general, and they want something fresh. They want a new perspective. Maybe they do decide to pick up on blockies, or, which I think is the more plausible scenario, isn't that they completely stop collecting Marvel Legends. Like they're still going to continue to pick up Hasbro products, but maybe they downscale on the amount of stuff that they pick up from Hasbro, and they decide to pick up blockies. Maybe they decide to have another small little display, maybe another shelf with just blocky collectibles. That's a real world possibility, and I think that's probably the most possible scenario, just because, again, people are fatigued with Hasbro. It's kind of the same repetitive stuff. They're reusing a lot of different body molds, and it doesn't feel like they've released anything that's groundbreaking or anything that's too new. So maybe this is a good alternative. As I said, I don't think they're going to stop collecting Marvel Legends, but maybe instead of spending 100% of their, like action figure budget on Hasbro, maybe now an extra 20 to 25% of that goes to blockies. I do feel like this could have at least a small effect on Hasbro, and small effects nowadays are pretty big, right? Everything's getting very expensive. We know that, gas prices are expensive. A few years ago, they were constantly talking about how plastic had gone extremely expensive. Not to mention the tariffs are still a relevant conversational topic, and we're starting to see it way more consistently. We're starting to see them kind of scale back. I think the biggest thing that I've seen, price hikes have obviously been a point of emphasis now for the last few years. But something that I've noticed way more over the past few months has been the lack of accessories. Like, there are a ton of different DC Multiverse or just like DC collectibles from McFarlane that have little to no accessories, sometimes absolutely no accessories, like no alternate hands. Back in the day, even if it was like a Batman, you would expect like a couple of extra hands and then like a Batarang. That was like the bare minimum. And then at other times you would get like the first appearance Batman, which I think was a regular DC Multiverse figure, which I think retailed for like 25. That one came with a ton of different accessories. I remember it came with like, I want to say like 6 hands total. It came with the wired cape. I actually owned that. It was like phenomenal value. I think that's probably one of the best releases, one of the best DC releases ever, because it was really well articulated. It had the wire running through the fabric cloth cape, and then a ton of different accessories. We're just not seeing that anymore. And I think that all of that has kind of been a byproduct of everything being extremely expensive. So if you guys are interested in trying something a little bit new, something that we haven't seen before, and yes, technically they're not action figures, they're technically model kits, and they're slightly smaller or considerably smaller than a Marvel Legends action figure. Like a Marvel Legends, you're looking at closer to about like 6 inches, 6.5 inches, whereas in a lot of the blockies are slightly smaller. But it is worth mentioning the price point on these is only $15. And I actually did take a closer look at the Iron Man. It came with a decent array of extra accessories, and I think all of them came with like either alternate hands or, like swappable weapons and things of that nature. So again, I'm not saying, stop collecting Hasbro Marvel Legends or just Hasbros in general. But if you guys want to try something different, something that's completely off the wall, I do feel like these are a very good alternative. Again, $15, you have a ton of fun building them, and then you can display them on your shelf. And just to reiterate, this isn't the first time that we're seeing blockings. Like, they've been around for quite some time. They've actually been doing a lot of Transformers product over like the past year or so, and I've heard nothing but absolutely amazing things from the Transformers line. So even if this doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to stop collecting or replace anything with blockies, just, give them a try. $15, I think, is an absolute killer deal. And the library of licenses that they're picking up is growing almost on a weekly basis. Like, every now and then we'll get like an announcement that slides under the radar. I just recently saw that on Entertainment Earth, they actually had some Naruto model kits. I'm not sure exactly what this means for the future. Are they going to continue manufacturing more more model kits based on Naruto, potentially maybe other anime series? Could they potentially get like One Piece in the foreseeable future, maybe Dragon Ball? Although I believe we've already seen model kits from overseas taking on those particular franchises, but who knows? I mean, Blocky seems pretty intent on trying to pick up way more IPs, and this is pretty exciting. Now, I've been saying for the last few videos that I'm kind of trying to play catch up. I'm trying to release or talk about stuff that has recently been released, even though most of this news, I guess, maybe like a month old at this point, but they're really good looking collectibles, and I just couldn't pass up an opportunity to talk about them. I did want to talk about Nanmu Studios, I think is how you pronounce their name, but it's a manufacturer that I had personally never heard of, but they do have a couple of different Allosaurus action figures and then a couple of different crocodile action figures. Not only are these figures like really well painted, they have amazing sculpt work all around, but they actually have a decent array of articulation. The Allosaurus is supposed to have about 21 points of articulation, and then the crocodile figure is supposed to have 27 points of articulation. And I'm assuming a lot of those points come from the tail, because it does appear like it's maybe attached. It has multiple ball joints running through the tail. At least that's what I could see from the promotional images. The crocodile is supposed to be a little bit under 14 inches long. And then the Allosaurus is about 13 inches long. And I'm assuming that is from the tip of the head all the way down to the tail. Now, there are technically 4 different releases, but it's essentially just the same Allosaurus figure with 2 different color palettes. and then the same crocodile with 2 separate color palettes. So in terms of body molds or actual releases, it's technically 2 different collectibles, but you can get each one of them with different paint jobs. And I know most of you guys are thinking, well, we've already seen some of these type of reptiles from other manufacturers. Obviously, I think Mattel has the Jurassic license. And then we have seen like Hasbro do some crocodile action figures for their G.I. Joe line. But I think those pale in comparison in terms of sculpted detail, paint, and then just the level of articulation for these figures. Like, they're definitely going all out here. This is definitely not for everybody. It's, you know, somebody that really wants a finely detailed, finely sculpted action figure. But if this is something that fits in, that you can slot them in, you definitely have to check these out. On a side note, this is also a small studio. This is a small manufacturer. So if you want to help those smaller companies grow a little bit, this is a great way to do it. You know, pick up some great looking collectibles. Check out the promotional images. Don't take my word for it. I think Big Bad Toy Store now has them up for pre-order. So just kind of scroll through the images, see if it's something that is up your alley. And I did want to finish off today's video by tying it back to the beginning of the video, because I did talk about how Blockies out of nowhere is starting to manufacture Marvel collectibles. And there is one thing that I've noticed here, at least locally. I'm not sure if this is happening across the states, but I have maybe like 4 to 5 different Walmarts within like a 30-mile radius. And I've noticed that each and every single one of these is very lacking when it comes to Marvel Legends. I'm not sure if this is Hasbro pulling back their production. I'm not sure if this is Walmart kind of scaling back on the amount of Marvel Legends that they decide to order. Maybe they're just not selling well enough. And like, I'll be honest with you guys, our local area has never been like absolutely great when it comes down to keeping Marvel Legends in stock. And we don't get like anything rare. We don't get crazy clearance deals or anything like that. This isn't like, nothing noteworthy happens here locally. But I will say, in terms of like basic Marvel Legends action figures, we always have a decent array of them. We always have a decent stock. And what I've been noticing more and more consistently is that some of these, at least 2 that I can count off the top of my head, have absolutely 0 Marvel Legends. Like, they just have nothing in stock. G.I. Joes kind of come and go, but overall Hasbro has really scaled back, or there has been a huge scaling back in terms of what they have available in store. It's kind of interesting. Maybe this is something that eventually kind of clears up later once like the summer starts to hit, but at the moment of this recording, I don't know if there's a new transition. I don't know if they're looking to scale back on the production of action figures, or maybe a lot of these retailers just want to keep everything online. Like, they don't want to have a lot of in-store sales. But regardless, this is a new era. This is a new time for collecting, and things are going to get really interesting. We always talk about tariffs. We always talk about, like, you know, high gas prices and things of that nature. But that could, I think, lead to scarcity out there, which is already kind of difficult. I'm always talking about scalpers and action figure flippers and retailers trying to take advantage of the community. And I think the deeper we get into 2026, if this trend continues, it could get pretty scary out there, especially if you're a collector that wants to stay at a budget, and that really doesn't appear to be something that you can consistently do nowadays. But if anything, this is a great opportunity for those smaller manufacturers to kind of jump in and give us some great collectibles. They're not always going to be able to pick up the bigger IPs. They're not going to be making Marvel or DC characters, but in some cases they'll kind of sneak in and do something that is kind of a breath of fresh air, and the Blockies are a perfect example of that. But you have other smaller manufacturers that have you know, created their own lines, their own figures. And if, you know, maybe McFarlane is scaling back a little bit in terms of quality, in terms of accessories, in terms of value, and then Hasbro is just not going to keep stuff in stock, I think now is you know, at least an opportunity to check some of these smaller manufacturers out, give them a little bit of a test drive, see if it's something that you may be interested in. And if that's the case, then you can give them a little bit of business, help them grow, help them develop, and then in the foreseeable future, maybe they reward you with, you know, even more crazy collectibles. So again, just wanted to throw that out there because it's kind of been a trend that I've been noticing, and it could definitely be very troubling. But as always, this is just my personal opinion, my personal take. I'm very curious to see what all of you guys have to say. Let me know down below in the comment section. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Stay safe out there, enjoy the hobby, pose your action figures, and don't forget, check out our second channel. We do upload a lot of like MCU content and stuff along those lines. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.